Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel Pharmacy. Today we understand about the cell communications and the forms of cell signaling in a simplified way. This lecture will include the general principles of cell communication, cell signaling, intracellular signaling pathway, and forms of cell signaling that is contact-dependent, paracrine, synaptic and endocrine signaling. So, let's start. There are some important terms that will help you in understanding the topic. Human cell communication is a complex and highly regulated process that involves a variety of signaling molecules, receptors, and intracellular signaling pathways. So, first one is cell communication. It is defined as the communication between two or more cells via signals. Cell signaling, it is the ability for cells to respond to stimuli outside the cell through signaling molecules. Next is signal transduction, which is as same as cell signaling, and in this, chemical or physical signal is transmitted through a cell. Ligand, these are the chemical messengers that are released by one cell to the target cell. Ligand is also known as signaling molecules such as insulin, growth hormones, lipids and amino acid metabolites. Last is receptors. These are the protein molecules inside or on the surface of cell that binds to a specific site. And this diagram shows the simple mechanism of cell communication. As we know that there are so many receptors present on the surface of cell or inside the cell. Then, ligands or signaling molecules binds with the receptors. After this, chemical messengers relay the signal, and there are 3 steps in cellular communication, as signal perception means cells react to environmental changes, which they perceive through extracellular signals. Second is intracellular signal transduction, in which the signal is transmitted inside the cell, and in last step, cell shows response, which is termed as cellular response. Our first topic is general principles of cell communication that involve a sequence of processes by which a cell detects and responds to the signals in its surroundings or within itself. Cellular systems in the body communicate with each other to coordinate and integrate their functions. The process of sensing and responding to extrinsic signals is termed as cellular communication, and it is also known as signal transduction or cell signaling. For example, wound healing after injury, activation of the immune system in response to pathogens, and changes in gene expression during different developmental stages. Cellular communication is a stepwise process that involves few steps as the generation of an extrinsic signal, detection of the signal by a receptor, transduction of the signal by a receptor, and the transduction of the signal by intracellular signaling molecule. These are the 2 figures of cell surface receptors and intracellular receptors. In this, ligand binds with the receptor on the surface of cell, and it is hydrophilic or water-attracting in nature. And in this one, receptor is present inside the cell, and the ligand is attached or binds to the receptor, as the nature of ligand is hydrophobic or water-repelling in nature. Next topic is cell signaling, which is also known as signal transduction. It is defined as the ability for cells to respond to stimuli from their environment. And it is the process of cellular communication within the body driven by cells releasing and receiving hormones and other signaling molecules. As a process, cell signaling refers to a vast network of communication between and within each cell of our body. And it governs basic cellular activities and coordinates cell actions. It has three stages. First one is reception, where the signaling molecules bind to the receptor. Second is signal transduction, in which chemical signal results in a series of enzyme activations. And last stage is response, which is the resulting cellular responses. Local signaling includes growth factors and neurotransmitters. And long-distance signaling includes hormones. In this figure, receptor is present on the surface or plasma membrane and signaling molecule or ligand binds to it. Then, it relays molecule in a signal transduction pathway. After that, activation of cellular response occurs. Transduction and response take place in the cytoplasm of the cell. Now, our next topic is intracellular signaling, that means communication within a cell. External signals such as hormones, sensory signals, or electrical signals are specifically recognized by receptors that transduce the external signal into an intracellular signaling chain. The signal molecule usually binds to a receptor protein in the plasma membrane of target cell. Then, receptor activates the intracellular signaling pathways. One or more of the intracellular signaling proteins alter the activity of effector proteins and thereby the behavior of cell. The major signal transducers are receptors, signaling enzymes, and regulatory GT-paths. According to this figure, intracellular signaling pathway has various stages as signal, receptor, transduction, and last is response. So, signaling molecules such as hormones binds to the receptor present on the cell membrane. Then, it relays molecule and then effectors such as transcription factor is activated and response can be observed. Our last topic is forms of signaling. It is divided into four major categories based on the location of the receptor and the distance traveled by the signaling molecule. These categories are contact-dependent, paracrine, synaptic, and endocrine signaling. So, first category will be contact-dependent signaling. It is also known as juxtacrine signaling or direct signaling. It is a type of cell-cell or extracellular matrix signaling that requires close contact. This can be through gap junctions or through interactions of transmembrane proteins. A ligand on one surface binds to a receptor on another adjacent surface, so that cell needs to come in direct contact with the receptor on the target cell to deliver the signal. Distance of cell-to-cell contact is very short range. It provides a mechanism for strict spatial control of activation of one cell by another. Example of contact-dependent signaling is delta-notch pathway in embryonic development. In this figure, it shows the delta-notch pathway in embryonic development. Delta is a transmembrane protein on the signaling cell that binds to notch, which is a receptor on the receiving cell. And in this figure, receptor is present on the target cell and signaling molecule binds to it. Second form of cell signaling is paracrine signaling. It is defined as the signals that act locally between cells that are close together. It depends on local mediators that are released into the extracellular space and act on neighboring cells. Paracrine signals move by diffusion through the extracellular matrix. Paracrine signals are especially important during development, when they allow one group of cells to tell a neighboring group of cells what cellular identity to take on. These types of signals usually elicit quick responses that last only a short amount of time. In order to keep the response localized, paracrine ligand molecules are normally quickly degraded by enzymes or removed by neighboring cells. Removing the signals will re-establish the concentration gradient for the signal, allowing them to quickly diffuse through the intracellular space if released again. Examples are spinal cord development and inflammatory response. Transfer of signals across synapses between nerve cells. A nerve cell consists of dendrites, axon, and synapse. Chemical transmission takes place between two synapses and electrical impulse transmission occurs from dendrites to nerve endings. According to this diagram, signaling cell is present as a local mediator and then ligand binds to the target cell. Now, third form of cell signaling is synaptic signaling. It is similar to paracrine signaling, but there is a special structure called synapse between the cell originating and the cell receiving the signal. It is performed by neurons that transmit signals electrically along their axons and release neurotransmitters at synapse. Information is passed down the axon of the neuron as an electrical impulse is known as action potential. It only occurs between cells with the synapse by crossing the synaptic gap between the presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron. Synaptic vesicles contain chemical messengers, known as neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters bind to receptor sites on the postsynaptic cell, thereby completing the process of synaptic transmission. Example is synaptic signaling between a neuron and the muscle, that is neuromuscular junction, and it is controlled by neural activity. According to this diagram, there are two types of cells, that is sending cell and receiving cell. Neurotransmitter are present in the sending cell and it is releases into the synapse. Then, neurotransmitters are attached to the receptor. And after that, response can be observed. Last form of signaling is endocrine signaling. Signals from distant cells are called endocrine signals, and they originate from endocrine cells or glands such as thyroid gland, hypothalamus, pituitary gland, adrenal gland, and pancreas. These types of signals usually produce a slower response but have a longer lasting effect. It depends on endocrine cells, which secrete hormones into the bloodstream for distribution throughout the body. Because of their form of transport, hormones get diluted and are present in low concentrations when they act on their target cells. Local concentrations of ligands can be very high. Example is insulin that maintains the homeostatic blood sugar levels, and insulin is produced by the islets of Langerhans. In this diagram, hormones travel the vast distances between endocrine cells and their target cells via the bloodstream, which is a relatively slow way to move throughout the body. Because of their form of transport, hormones get diluted and are present in low concentrations when they act as ligands to the receptors on their target cells. And in the next lecture, we will study about the tissue level of organization. And if you have any doubt regarding our lectures, then kindly ask in the comment section. Thank you. Keep watching and take care.